So I wanted to make a small movie here. Unfortunately, I'm not a movie maker. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a shot. And what it's about is about a trim saw vise uh, design that I've come up with, and it's taken place over several years. And I think I finally come up with what I consider the optimum practical way for me at least to do this. Now, uh, if you don't recognize this, this is a table off of a 6-inch Rock Rascal trim saw. Now, in the past, I've found that almost all trim saws don't have a very adequate vise system. There isn't much you can do with them. They're generally a sandwich type of vise and it's very small. It doesn't hold a very large stone, and they don't have a whole lot of versatility. Well, combining a few features, I came up with this design, and I think it works quite well. Right now, I'm just going to go over the vise itself and how it's put together. And in a following movie or two, maybe even two or three, even, I'll go over the uses of it, the way I see it being used, and actually another part of it, so we can call this a system rather than just a vice. There's going to be another part to it. It's not uh, a series of parts. It's not anything really elaborate. This is really a fairly straightforward and simple idea. In fact, I have seen similar ideas, the concept, from another viewer who actually did it. I think it was for a trim saw, uh, uh, a tile saw that he was using as a trim saw, and he used wood in order to make it. And it's possible. I think a good woodworker could actually do it. So as I said, this is a Rock Rascal trim saw table. This is the first part of the vise. It's the base. Uh, if you notice, it has two dovetail edges here that mate with another part, and then it has this feature back here, which is a riser, I guess you'd say, that fits over the top of the edge of the table. This creates a fence, so to speak, off of this table edge. So the next part is the slide, uh, part of what I would call the device itself, a clamping system. And if you'll notice, it too is dovetailed to mate with this part. Then there are two uprights, which are simply standard 20 thread, 1/4 20 thread, all thread, that have been cut to a nominal height. You could make it higher, you could make it lower, depending upon what you think. And then there's two set screws in here. These two set screws are to uh, affix it to the table so that it doesn't move when you're cutting your rock. Now then, the next part is the top part of the vise, or the top jaw, I guess you would call it, seeing that to say this is the lower jaw, this is the upper jaw. And it would slide over, it's slotted. I put a piece of wood here that I just simply super glued to it, to the back, this aluminum. By the way, this is all made of aluminum. And that's for more gripping power on some of your stones. All right, and then it's slotted so that that fits over the top of each one of these uprights. And then there's two thumb knobs, thumb knobs that fit on the uprights, and these are basically an alternative to using wing nuts. Although wing nuts could be used also. I just don't really like wing nuts. They sometimes they're hard on your fingers and stuff when you're trying to get a good grip. Of course, these smaller rocks isn't quite so bad. So this is what the vise itself, the configuration, looks like. So this is the vise and this is the slide. Now these two dovetails match, and it slides together like this with the set screws on the inside and the uprights on the outside. Of course, I guess you could turn it around too if you really wanted to. I'm not so sure. There might be an application for that. So essentially that's it. Then it just simply slides over the top of that rail. And this becomes your fence. And then it's just a matter of sliding it back and forth into your saw blade. Now everything's been squared up so that with this particular saw, it's very square. So this slot and this is square. Assuming that the blade is square, everything is square, you should be able to get a very decent square cut on your rock. So now then, how this is, how you mount your rock in this, and this is about as far as I'll take this from now on, from this point, is that, okay, for instance, here's just it's actually a piece of howlite is what it is. And of course, you have limitations on what your thickness of rock is, but you simply mount it on this sliding part of the vise, and then screw your thumb nuts down. And they work. I like them because they work real easy that way, easier than a wing nut, I think. And you can get more. I made them large enough so that you get more even pressure down on this. And then it's just a matter of tightening them up. And I like to tighten them, kind of equally, a little bit on one side and the other side, just to make sure. And of course, you'd extend your rock wherever you could, as far out as you wanted to, within reason, so that it's not out there too far. But you have to leave a little clearance down here so that the rock isn't dragging on it, which is built into this anyhow. But you don't want it dropping down on this slide so that you can't move it back and forth. So you have your rock clamped in, and I mean that I didn't really put hardly any pressure on that, and that's in there pretty damn tight. And you have your saw here. You get it all started up and you get it going, and then you that's out down like that. You move your slide to the point where you want to make your first cut. So you get it here, you slide it through and make your cut. And then you bring it back. Now it all has to be done manually, of course. I mean, and it's best probably if you were to uh, grab it here someplace where it's fairly solid. Now I should have said a little earlier that once you get it in the position where you want to make your first cut, you just tighten these two little set screws down, and that holds this firmly in place. And then you can grab it here. You're going to have to keep some pressure down on it because no matter what saw you're using and what vise, as you feed into the blade, it tends to want to lift the rock up. So you have to have some way to keep it in place. So then, of course, howlite, if I were cutting this, it's very soft, so it would go pretty fast. And I could probably get a maximum depth of cut on this because it's a soft rock. Agate is a completely different story, of course. But anyhow, you move it in there and you slide it down, you make your cut, you pull it back, you loosen your your set screws up, and then you move this out your 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters, however you want to look at it, 6.2 millimeters. Tighten your set screws down, and then make your next cut. So once this cut's made, each individual cut afterwards should be parallel, and that a lot of it depends upon the squareness of your table, but most of the saws are pretty square. So this is kind of an overview of the vise itself and a little bit on how it's to be used. And I want to get back into my shop. It's a little bit warm out there right now and everything else, and I'll try and do a demonstration on actually cutting it, and then bring up this other system that goes with it. It's I don't want to get into it right now, but this system is, I think, a very a very helpful part of this vise system that I've designed. Thanks.